Have you ever wondered how some people manage to balance a full-time job and their entrepreneurial hustle? Now, on today's episode of Mind Your Business, I'm talking to Shari Nycole, and she's a media powerhouse who's mastered the art of employeepreneurship. So stay tuned as we uncover her secrets to juggling it all while thriving in both worlds. Now, I want to welcome you to Mind Your Business, the podcast that goes straight to the core of what drives entrepreneurial success. And I'm your host, Max Fortune. And each week I explore the mindset, strategies, and real-life stories of thriving entrepreneurs. Make sure to deliver the insights you need if you're looking to start, grow, or scale your business. Now, today I'm super excited to have Shari Nycole on the show. And Shari is a dynamic media personality, as you will see. She's a producer, a host, an entrepreneur who's worked with some of the top names in the industry. She's also the perfect example of how you can balance both being an employee and an entrepreneur, a term she likes to call employeepreneurship. So let's dive into her journey and find out how she does it all. But before we dive into our conversation with Shari, let's set the stage with our Mindset Minute. Now, this is where we take a moment to focus on a powerful nugget of wisdom that's designed to push you through the challenges of the week. And it's a quick mental reset, keep you sharp, and motivated and ready to tackle whatever comes your way. So let's get into it. Now, as we talk about balancing employment and entrepreneurship today, remember that mindset is key. So it's not always about doing everything perfectly. It's about showing up consistently, managing your energy, and also prioritizing what matters most. Make sure you shift your focus from time management to energy management, and actually you'll find that you can achieve more than you ever thought possible. Now, with that in mind, let's bring in Shari Nycole to learn how she manages her time, her career, and her entrepreneurial hustle. Shari, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Max. You said I manage my time,
career.
I manage that? Oh,
yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So
I'll take that as a compliment. I don't always feel that way, but
you say you don't always feel that way?
I don't always feel that way, but for the purposes of this show and this conversation, we'll just say that I do.
Okay, sounds good. So listen, here, before we really dive into this, I almost feel like with all that you're happening with you right now, I almost feel like when you walk in, I'm just curious, okay? So when you walk into places now, I'm wondering if you get something like, something like this. Anything like that happen to you? No, nothing like that happens to you ever?
Come on, sound effects. No, everybody leaves me be.
Are you sure? How about this? When you kind of walk in the rooms.
Wouldn't that be nice? And like some flower
flowers,
petals coming before I walk in?
Does that happen for you?
No. Guys, take notes. This is how you should do me when I come into these spaces, per Max Fortune.
Yeah, I just thought with all this going on. So I just wanted you to, I want to say congratulations.
Thank you.
On your article with Essence. That
Thank
was
you.
just amazing with Shari Richardson. So we're going to talk about that. And honestly, actually, you know what? We're going to start with that. I just wanted to, how did that come about?
You know what's crazy? So I've been with Essence since August of 2021. And it's been a crazy ride, and I mean that in the best of ways, ebbs and flows, all that good stuff. But, my primary job with Essence is as a branded video content producer. And there came a time where our now CCO just presented an opportunity for me to do some stuff on the sports side with Essence, which was new for them.
Wow.
And it was the Final Four. And there was a brunch that took place via Essence maybe like a few months before. I wasn't aware of the brunch, but I became aware that Essence was doing some stuff in the Black women's sports space. I'm like, oh my God, I'm a former athlete. Like, I'm a journalist. I have a huge sports love and background. I would love to be a part. And so ever since probably March of 2022, I had just been volunteering to do some stuff with Essence Black Women in Sports. And as the volunteering continued, there was a lot of excitement that continued to build within the company itself around Black women in sports.
Wow.
So it just kind of grew and blossomed. And shout out to my manager, Stephanie Donovan, who was just an incredible, first of all, creative force herself, but also a huge advocate for me to continue to grow within Essence itself. And so this article came about. It was funny, maybe like 4 months ago. The VP of content, her name is Nandi Howard. She's incredible as well. We were just talking at an event, and she said, I got this cover story. I'm trying to book a certain person or persons for the cover. And I said, oh my goodness, that sounds amazing. I said, I'd love to be a part of that. Like, I'd love to write the story if there's an opportunity. Now, there's different editors, for people that don't know, that write cover stories for magazines. It's not always the same person and all that. And so she was like, okay. And I said, that's it? Like, I know I can write, but that wasn't the capacity under which I worked at the company. So sometimes people may say, hey, I need to see some samples or whatever. She's like, no, let's do it. So the people that she was trying to book initially didn't work out.
Wow.
And I thought the opportunity, okay, that
It's
didn't
gonna
work
go
out, was
away.
gone. And so then when Shari came around, she was like, yeah, you're right. I told her, I said, hey, I'd still love to be a part in some way. She's like, you're writing the story. Like, I already told you this like a couple months ago. I'm like, oh, I didn't know it just applied, period, to this particular issue. And so Shari was amazing. We did the interview in New York. I did something with her on camera as well. And I think it turned out to be really good. We've been, a lot of people have been giving great feedback about it. It's been well received. And for me, I just wanted people to see the heart of who she is and how that also drives her excellence as an athlete. Shari is an interesting kind of complex person, and a lot of times we don't see just the soft side of her.
Right.
So I was hoping that this article that shined through, and I think people were really receptive to that. So I'm very grateful. But shout out to my Essence team, but in particular Stephanie Donovan, Barku Tubman, and D. Howard. They're amazing.
Wow. And so the other thing I just saw, like just peering in, getting ready for this interview, was there somebody else like a guy like Lamar Jackson?
Isn't
How
that
did you
crazy?
get that?
Nandi again. Nandi called me, and it's funny. We did this interview in May of this year. Nandi called me and said Lamar Jackson's team reached out, and he wants to do a sit down. I'm like, she's like, what do you think? I'm like, Lamar Jackson, of course. Now, mind you, we all know Lamar doesn't do sit down interviews. It's just not what he does.
Yeah, that is.
And I said, this is incredible. I was like, 2-time NFL MVP. Like, what are we doing? Let's do it. She's like, okay, let's do it. And so we did the interview in May, and, we worked through it. And, things happen, too, that people don't always understand. Like, you could do an interview and it may not see the light of day for months down the line. The timing may not be right, or, that person's team may not be ready for that to come out, or there may need to be changes made. And so when we knew the Netflix special was coming, and even before then, we had a couple times we wanted to try to release it. But when the Netflix game came up and we knew it was coming, we said, okay, I think that we can strike while the iron's hot. A lot of conversation around Lamar right now, possibly being a 3-time MVP. And if you remember, when they first started the season, they started like 0-2.
Yeah.
They didn't have a good start to the
start.
season. So, when the Netflix game came, we were like, okay, let's go for it. And, the Ravens were on board, and the NFL was on board, and we finally got the green light to put it out. And so I'm so grateful for all of the reception and the kind words, and the YouTube comments look amazing. And I just feel like, again, the goal is I want to show the human side of these public figures. Yeah. And I think we got that with Lamar. And there was a woman that reached out to me a couple days ago in my DM, and her husband plays on the Ravens.
Wow.
And she said, my husband is Lamar's teammate, and he is still a mystery to me. Thank you for that interview. I feel like I got to know him a little bit better. So thank you for your work. So it's those things. There's a ministry involved in this where I just want people to see the heart of these people that sometimes don't even feel human to them. So shout out to Lamar Jackson and his team. He's absolutely amazing. There's a charm about him that's just really fun to just sit with and be around. And hopefully we see him get that MVP and also that Super Bowl. It's time.
Yeah,
it's time.
Yeah. I agree. I do agree. That's time, and they've gotten close so many times. They got right to the door,
right
and
there.
So hopefully it's hopefully this is their year. They look really good. They look really good, and so with we're just kind of touching or scratching the surface, but you've had such an impressive career in media and production.
Thanks, Max.
And obviously, so just for the audience, working with companies like TV One, we just talked about Essence, PBS. So can you kind of shape your journey? Kind of how did you get started in media production?
It's interesting because the start of even the love for it came upon a disappointment with athletics. Like, I wanted to play professional basketball, and when that situation didn't work out, and I knew in my sophomore year that I was going to transfer schools and basketball probably wasn't going to be what I would do for the rest of my life, I became more open to the possibilities of something else. And so my academic advisor pulled me in her office, Mary Weaver Cleaves at Wisconsin, and she said, what are your thoughts around like switching your majors? Now, initially my major was business. I hate math. I was like struggling to get through econ. Accounting, I was in tears. Like, I just was not good. Mind you, my mother's an accountant. That just shows you how bad I was at this. But something in me thought that was sexy to say, oh, I want to be in a business school. You need a 3.5. And it was just a lot of pressure, and it just wasn't a strong suit of mine. The math piece of it, like the numbers piece. And even to this day, I still have financial anxiety I try to work through. Don't judge me, y'all. But she sat me in her office, and she said, are you sure this is the direction you want to go with this major? She's like, you're barely, you're right there to 3.5, but I know, like, this has been a struggle for you. This has been very stressful. You don't seem to be enjoying this process. What do you think about journalism? And I said, well, I never really thought about it. She said, well, I'm looking at your ACT scores and reading and writing, and you're a very strong writer. You've got incredible, like, just literary skills. What about a shift? I think that this might be a better direction for you. And I was like, okay, I trusted her. And so I shifted my major into journalism, and then by the time I transferred from University of Wisconsin to Northern Illinois University, I teamed up with another academic advisor who said, hey, you want to do this behind the camera or you want to do it in front? I was like, I want to do it in front. Let's go. So I learned how to produce. I learned how to write scripts. I learned how to do newscasts. I was a part of the newscast team over at Northern Illinois University the 2.5-3 years I was there. And that's where the love started. And then from there, I went to grad school at Northwestern, the Medill School of Journalism there, and I really got my footing there and my confidence. Like, okay, I can do this for real. And networking, I tell people this all the time. I've never filled out a resume, ever.
Really?
It's been all about who you know. And for me, I've known some really great people. And, I had a couple professors at Northwestern that were incredible and that really connected me with the right people. So that first job I got as a producer, as associate producer at Towers Productions, was all because of the connections I had made in grad school. Most people don't go into the industry as producers of any sort. They go in as production assistants. I've never been a PA. Like, I don't even know what that is. Like, I know what it is because I've hired them to work with them. I didn't have to come in with that experience. I just kind of jumped past that point and came in right as an AP. And then from there, it's just continued to grow. And again, word of mouth. You work hard, you work well, and you work well with others. And then that continues to push the momentum, and people remember that, and then they refer you for something else. And so that's really been the gist of my career. But I really stand firm on my reputation. I take it very seriously, and I'm a team player, probably because of sports. I don't know, but I value my team, and I don't want anybody to ever look up and say she didn't give 110%. Like, she doesn't work hard enough, or she has a bad attitude. If anything, I fight for my creative. I'm feisty. I'm fire. They used to call me when I was in my 20s. I was fire in my 20s. They used to call me fire, literally.
Wow.
When I worked on the news side, because I just was relentless. Like, whatever needs to be done, I don't like that. Let's switch that. I just had this passion, and I still have it, but it's a little more tempered now that I'm 38. But that's really what it's been, and it's been a lot. It's been amazing. I've learned a lot. I've had my heart broken. I've had to adjust. I mean, it's been a journey, but I think now seeing the other fruit that I'm bearing now from those experiences, like the Lamar Jackson sit down and the Sha'Carri Richardson write up. And again, I haven't written, Max. I don't know if people even know this. I haven't written, like, I'm a writer that hasn't written in years. Like, I haven't written like that in a long time. So it's been really cool to kind of see all of the pieces kind of start coming together in a way.
It's amazing when you can have that kind of a journey. It's even just it seems like so many people kind of crafted and shaped, or just kind of was part of the process for you kind of coming into your own. I think it's always great. You also said something about, I guess, even advisors and people who kind of advise you and guided you. Or I think it's great when someone can see something in you, and help direct or guide you in a way to find something that, obviously they saw something in you that you are now
let me tell you something. Let me be clear here, guys. No dream is achieved alone. There were many points in the process for me, especially early on, where I did not believe in the me that other people saw. Like, the Medill School of Journalism is a very prestigious institution, and I'm not just talking about in the country. I'm talking about worldwide. Like, it is one of the top journalism schools in the world. I didn't think I belonged there. I was still I'm still to this day like, how did I get in there? It's not to say that I didn't have the grades and all that, but I was in this cohort of about 75 students. I think like maybe 7 of us were black, and a lot of these other students had come from Ivy League schools. Wow. So coming from a mid-major like a Northern Illinois University, like a regional school, like, I got a great education, but it wasn't a lot of kids coming from that background in that cohort. And so I dealt with the insecurities of that, but I had teachers that really saw the strong writer in me, the strong, media personality and reporting skills I had, and said, no, you belong here, you can do this. And so they helped usher me in. But even getting to Medill, I had academic advisors that said, no, go here. To the point, and this is why you have to be very discerning, and you have to find mentors that you trust. Yeah. Shout out to Dr. Todd Yeary. He was my professor at Northern Illinois University. And it was my senior year. I was a 5th-year senior because, guys, back then, you couldn't just go in a transfer portal and go to another school. You had to redshirt, sit out a year. And so I had already gotten the credits to graduate. And I said, I've never taken a Black history course. Let me just take one. I took his class. It was a night class. It was once a week.
Oh, my gosh.
I would come in there right after practice. So I'm barely holding on, But I'm a strong writer, so I pay attention just enough. Maybe raise my hand once or twice in class to show that I exist and do my little participation points, write my little papers, do my thing. But I was just very casual about the class and just trying to stay awake. No shade to him. I just was tired from practice. But it was interesting because I never had these long talks with Dr. Yeri. But as the semester came to a close, he started to ask me, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I'm thinking about law school maybe. I don't feel like I'm totally ready to just jump into the workforce. I feel like I need something else, even if it's grad school. And he said, okay, well, I'm going to send you some information. I just want you to fill everything out. That's all he said to me. And it was for Medill. I had no clue about the procedure of that school. And had I known, I wouldn't have applied because I'd have been like, I can't do this. But I did everything he told me to do. And he's the reason. He's the reason why I can sit and talk about these things with you. Because he believed. And then my other academic advisor, Dr. Doderline, rest his soul, they both had PhDs from Northwestern. And they said, you can do it. So I just literally trusted them. They had never steered me wrong. And they're the ones that kind of got me to the threshold of Medill. And then I had incredible teachers, Steve Garnett and Cheryl Jackson, that helped to hold my hand through that process and get me through. So I've had amazing mentors. If you don't have a mentor, you're failing yourself. You are failing. If you want to be great and you're not attached to anybody else who's great in the form of a mentor, you're doing yourself a grave disservice.
I'm glad you said that because I don't know how many people actually go out and seek mentors or seek even for even sometimes even in the way of even internships sometimes become those opportunities to connect with someone who has who's a little further along or who is where you want to be.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes people and I understand the economics sometimes. Economics prevents people from being able to take some unpaid internships, but I think that there's a lot that you can benefit from education. Everything is sometimes you have to delay $1 or for $5 tomorrow. You
Absolutely,
know what I mean?
Max.
And so I think that some people you got to see the big picture.
Yeah.
So I think that that's super important. And so I kind of want to have you talk about, you've also built your own production company, Shari Nycole Media.
Yeah.
And so while continuing to work for other major brands like we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
So I want you to kind of talk about it because, again, my platform is mostly business owners. This is why I talk to people who want to start, grow, or scale.
Yeah.
And so you did something interesting where you kind of started your business while you were still employed, while still being employed. So talk about that journey. I think that's so interesting.
Yeah, I got scared into doing it. It wasn't anything that I wanted to do at the time. Because to me, it's an extra piece of work. Yeah. Like, I don't want to go through the admin of having to do this, but just $14,000. Leave that number in your brain, okay? I was working on a show called Power Star Live. I was the co-EP, co-executive producer. It was for Will Packer Productions. It was an incredible show. We had one amazing season, and we weren't able to continue. But during that show, I was also working on Sister Circle Live, which was my staff job, my 9 to 5, my bread and butter. So the show Power Star Live was a freelance opportunity that afforded me an opportunity, first of all, career-wise, to be in the highest position I'd ever been up to that point, but also to make a substantial amount of money in addition to what I was making with Sister Circle. But I wasn't doing that through a business. So when that all ended and I got slapped with a $14,000 tax bill, I was talking to my accountant and I was like, what's this? Now, mind you, I was talking to my now accountant, but at the time, he was the accountant for Power Star Live. I didn't have an accountant.
Wow. But
I had bonded with him so much through that process because I was working with him to pay people out. Like, when you're an executive producer, you got to pay people.
Right.
So I just, he was starting his own business. I said, I want to be one of your clients. So he held my hand through that. But literally, I saw that $14,000 tax bill. I was terrified. Wasn't making anywhere near enough money to pay that off. And I said, John, is this real? Like, what's going on here? He said, it is. He said, because you don't have a business. So this is under your name. So the government's going to pull. They want this money back. I said, what? So he actually helped me form Shari Nycole Media, LLC, and that's how it started. It did not start because I wanted to own my own business, and I was so anxious about it, and I'm going to do this. No, it was because I was terrified and staring down the barrel of a $14,000 tax bill. So that's how it happened. Again, God has his way of getting our attention.
Yeah, indeed.
And for me, it was just neglect and being anxious for an opportunity and money that I needed at the time and financial security, but not understanding how that financial security would be compromised down the line because of how I didn't set things up in the beginning.
Yeah. And you know what? I'm so glad you said that, because structure and business structure is super important, and it can make all the difference in the world.
Yes.
As you're outlining there. And one of the things that I'm really strong on is, a lot of people go out, do start businesses even, and don't go through the process of incorporating, getting the, and doing all of those steps you have to do. And all of that's super, super important to strategically set up. But what I find even most of all is that a lot of people will start a business, run and operate a business, but never establish business credit. Credit for that business. And so that's one of the things that, in this new year I'm coming up, I'm really been passionate about trying to reach out and help business owners to do that. So I have an entire system, but we're not going to get into all of that today. But
well, you can help me with that, because that's a weakness of mine. So
and you know what? It's something that it's not hard to do. It's just a process of things you have to do, and when you have to do it. And so I kind of developed this entire business credit system that's a dashboard, and it's online. We actually have an app that's any day now should be hitting the
I love that, Max.
iOS.
I'm going to tap in.
Okay,
I need help with that.
Good. And so you're kind of talking about how you kind of thrusted into really the business world while you were an employee. And so you, I do now want you to kind of define this employeepreneurship definitions. Kind of define, what does that mean, or what does that mean for you?
First of all, guys, I need you to understand that you need to follow a phenomenal powerhouse black woman. Her name is Deetra Giles. I need you to follow her right now on Instagram, DETHRA_GILES. Deetra Giles actually coined the term employeepreneur. And I have the privilege of doing a segment with her every Tuesday on the Willie Moore Jr. Show, which I co-host on Praise 102.5 here in Atlanta. It's nationally syndicated, but since we're in Atlanta, Praise 102.5. And she brought that term up, and she helps people to understand that you don't need to be either or. You can be both. Wow. And so before I met her, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, hot or cold? I'm an entrepreneur, or I'm someone's employee. There's no in between. But with her, I've learned there can be total opportunity for you to be fruitful financially, moving in both spaces seamlessly. And so for me, I took it's not even blame, that's not a good word, but there was a stigma that I had put on myself. Like, hey, you're not able to be a full-time entrepreneur. You still need to depend on being somebody's employee. Like, I was downing myself about it. But in talking to her, it helped me to understand, like, yo, you can be someone's employee, and you can still work Shari Nycole Media. If that's what you need to do to make a living and to be happy, and to have the things that you want and things that you need and the access you may get on one side that you may not get on the other, that's totally fine. So Employeepreneur provided me the comfort in knowing, like, there's more than one way to skin a cat. And I think what the pandemic did, it opened up a lot of our eyes to the fact that we need to have multiple streams of income. I think a lot of people, though, took that and said, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And then you look up a year later and I don't got no money. I got to move back in my parents, because it's like, no, I'm not working for anybody. No, I'm going to work Shari Nycole Media as much as I can. And I'm going to also work my 9 to 5. And when I get to the opportunity where I can release the 9 to 5 life and just go in full-time entrepreneurship, if that's what I want to do, then I'll do it. But the thing that people don't talk about enough is just entrepreneurship is not easy. You don't always know where your next check is coming from. You'll do something for somebody and you'll get contracted out. They may say a net 30 and it might turn into a net 120. And you have to figure it out in between. So it's the in-betweens that exist in entrepreneurship that aren't talked about enough. So while you're dealing with the in-betweens, wouldn't it be nice to have that check come every 2 weeks that you know it's coming, if you're not wearing yourself thin? So that's where that term comes from. And I just encourage people, like, if you're a full-time entrepreneur, that's in your spirit, that's great. I don't think that's most people. I totally don't. I think most people either fall in the line up, which is nothing wrong with this, guys, employee or employeepreneur. So that's where it comes from.
You know what? You're probably right. And I think it also, I think that whole, or what you're defining or outlining, is a way of, not that the people need permission, but it's a way of kind of understanding or that you can do both.
Yes.
You can be both. You don't have to do either or.
Yes.
I jumped out the window and what I did, but I think if people listen to what you were just saying, and there is a way. And I think with, I know for me, I kind of started off that way also because I think even in college, once I was kind of getting through college, I never went to college 3 days a week. I was doing too much in school. I just was. I was trying to go to college full time. I really was running the business full time and trying to work full time. And it only went full time. So, but I would when I would work, I would just work Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays for someone else, and Tuesdays and Thursdays for me.
Yeah.
You know. So that's kind of how I kind of transitioned out. Is I just made sure Tuesday and Thursday was the days that I work, and I think when people are thinking about even how that some people, like you said, since the pandemic have gotten to a situation where they are with remote jobs and with things, there's more opportunity, some freedom of time. There's not the commute that you had, so those hour and a half commute that you don't have, you don't have now is time that you could be working on a business or so yeah, I think that there's definitely ways to manage both, and I think it's super important to set up the right structure so that you are taking advantage of the fact that even when you are getting money on the business side. And so I think one of the other things that I think is great about both is you mentioned something. You mentioned that 14,000 and all of that stuff. And so the good thing about there's a bunch of people who are in high-paying salary jobs, but you need that tax write-off.
Right.
You know, so that business helps you write off everything you do for that business is a write-off, and it offsets taxes that you paid that come out of your check. So it just makes a difference. And honestly, if you're even savvy, you could mess with that W-4, the W-9, or whatever. But
go ahead and let people know, Max. And it's funny because you mentioned this because I didn't really understand expenses, like the importance and the value of being able to track, chart, document, and turning your expenses. And so that $14,000 tax bill could have been a lot lower had I been, well, I drove here out of my way. I drove from Norcross to Fayetteville, sometimes 5 days a week. That's miles, that's gas, that's food, that's all these different things. I wasn't charting any of that. I just didn't understand. So after that $14,000 tax bill, we're going out for a business lunch? Okay, boom, boom, boom. I'm expensing down. Because here's the other thing I had to learn. Whether you spend it now or they take it later, it's going to be gone. I would rather spend it and expense it than not spend it, and then the government take it anyway.
No, and it's a super great point. And the funny thing is, I'm smiling as you're talking because I'm thinking about you were saying your how you switched from business to to media. The funny thing is, I was in college. I was an accounting major, and but I don't want to be an accountant. I just kind of wanted to know what my accountant knew. I always knew I wanted to be in business. And I think that I just wanted to know. I wanted to understand money, how it worked. And but my second year in, it started getting serious, and I was like, "This is ridiculous." So I did like you. I shifted my career, and I went into media, telecommunications. Which is really like the cop out thing in the school. I don't know if it was or not, but I was already into like entertainment and things like that. So it was the natural transition, but. I want to just piggyback on the point you just made earlier. It's so important to understand how those things work, how expenses work, and what happens is, and it's a completely different mindset than when you're an employee. I mean, as a business owner, almost everything you do is a write-off. And especially the conversations you have, the business conversations, the dinners and the lunches and things like that. As long as you talk about business, even those other lunches, even those you talk about business before or after, then it's a write-off. And so understanding how to kind of minimize it, and the way it works for businesses is the more expenses you have, the less taxes you pay, and even the things you can write off on that employee side. So really, if you kind of maximize both of those scenarios, you can really maximize your income even more.
Absolutely.
By bringing in extra revenue, but then also offsetting that salary and lowering the taxes that you pay to Uncle Sam on that. And there's nothing wrong with that. As it's the way the system is, and so you just have to learn how to use that and how to utilize
Yeah,
that. So
for sure.
thank you for kind of going into that and just explaining that, because I think it's super important. So what I want to know also, I want you to share how, we're talking about a little bit of the money, but now the time. Time is currency.
It is, absolutely.
And so running your own business is very demanding, like you said. And so talk about how do you balance both of those with your time,
I am very blessed, Max. Once the pandemic hit, the show that I was producing on, I was a segment producer for Sister Circle Live. I had to go to the same place the same time, 5 days a week. So I'm in a particular place for 8 to 10 hours a day.
Wow.
When that show was canceled, that went away. And it was interesting because when we first started remote working, even before the show was canceled, I was very leery about working from home. I didn't think I was going to be able to focus enough. I didn't think I was going to be productive enough. I was like, I need to be going somewhere. Let me tell you something, I was wrong. Okay? I have not worked in a place, in a building outside of my house since 2020.
Wow.
Since March of 2020. With that said, I have a lot more flexibility with my time. When I got the job offer at Essence in 2021, the pandemic, that whole thing was still a thing. It wasn't as severe, so to speak, as it was in the beginning. But it was still very much, hey, we are doing a lot more remote work right now because of the pandemic. We need folks. We know that moving here to New York is going to be difficult for a lot of people, but we understand there's talent out here beyond New York. We want to offer you an opportunity to work remotely. I was like, absolutely. For sure. Are you kidding me? So with that said, I have my Zoom calls and all that, but I'm not going anywhere. I set up my office at my house. Everything that I want to do, right there, even with radio. So radio, I'll go into the studio sometimes if I need to, if I have to interview people. If I don't, I do radio from home.
Wow.
And we all started that, when the pandemic happened. So every single thing I do, whether it's through Shari Nycole Media, and again, that doesn't mean I don't have to go and set here or there, but the normal day-to-day for me is remote. Everything I do.
Wow.
So even though I have 2 and 3 jobs sometimes at once, maybe even 4, depending on what's going on, I can do everything from my house. So I get up in the morning, I go to do my devotional, I go to the gym, and then I get to work. And so for me, it helps me to manage my time a lot better because I'm not having to physically be somewhere and tied to a location for a certain amount of time. Now, I know everybody doesn't have that luxury, and the way that you manage is totally up to you. But I will say, don't mismanage your wellness because you're trying to micromanage your business. Don't do that.
Say that again.
Do not mismanage your wellness because you're trying to micromanage your business. And even your business being, if you have a business and or if you are somebody's employee, we are forfeiting our wellness way too much for work. And so for me, the balance is like looking at these tiers. It has to be faith, family, fitness, finances, and then like there's my job, job ties in with finances. But everything else has to be in line. I'm not gonna keep missing church every week because I gotta get this done. No. It'll be here when I get back. I'm not missing the gym. Sorry. I take conference calls. No shade, guys. I take conference calls in the gym. Like if it's that important, I have my time. I go to the gym.
Wow.
And again, my coworkers know that. So people already know. Okay, from this time she's in the gym. She's not gonna miss any calls or anything. She's totally available. But I get my work done. So nobody's gonna, what are you gonna do? There's nothing for you to dispute. But I'm going to go to the gym because that makes me well. If for some people it might be taking a walk. It might be yoga. It might be having that cup of coffee and sitting and reading that devotional in the morning to get you set. But you have to set yourself up from a wellness standpoint to have wellness on the other side. So for me, the balance is making sure that I'm not mismanaging my wellness, to be honest with you. There's balance isn't ideal. Like there's gonna be times where something takes priority over something else. Like that's how it goes. Some weeks I might be just slammed with work. I don't have time to cook anything. I gotta try to grab a sandwich from Jersey Mike's or get a salad from a place or whatever. And then there's sometimes I'm cooking this week. It just depends. I think we're unfair to ourselves because we think that there's some type of equilibrium that exists and it doesn't. Homeostasis that we want so bad, that's not life. So understanding the purpose in your prioritization plan and having one, and then making sure that you're not mismanaging your wellness.
You know what? That is well said, and Yeah. I'm thinking about myself all the time. You do this, and
Yeah,
you know
Max,
what?
go to bed, Max. Get sleep.
Yeah, I heard about sleep. I'm gonna Google it after the show. So,
Go to sleep, Max.
but you know what? For me, and this may sound weird or whatever. I don't know how it's gonna sound, but for me, kind of like I don't know if I'm different or wired, just weird. But like work is not work for me. It's kind of like what I love doing. I tell Nycole this all the time. I say, you know, for some people, business is what they do.
Yeah.
And for others, it's who they are.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
for me, it's who I am. It's not what I do.
Mm-hmm.
So I know it may seem out of balance or whack or whatever to work 7 days a week and as many hours I work. I ain't gonna say how many hours that is, but I enjoy what I do for one, and I think at the end of the day you have to know yourself and know what you enjoy or what brings you joy, and I think that's kind of what you're what you're alluding to or talking about is the what brings you balance in that space, and so I don't know. I don't know if I'm creating balance for myself or not. I don't really know, but I do know I enjoy what I do, and I think I just wouldn't feel alive if I'm just like I just can't sit and be doing nothing. You know, I'm like I just can't sit and do nothing. But you know what? I want you to also talk about how do you work? You kind of talked about how do you manage this employee and the work your business. So how do you go about balancing your work, both of those two things, in your personal life?
That's an interesting question, Max. I think there are things in my personal life that suffer a bit. I would have to say like the dating part of my life has suffered. It's funny, I'm even saying this because one of the things that I want to create in 2025 is a more parallel kind of lifestyle where, you know, my professional trajectory and my personal trajectory, especially when it comes to dating, is moving in the same direction. They're not infringing on each other, but they're both moving upward. I'm very lopsided in that respect right now, and have been for many years. So that is an issue. Other than that, like I don't play around when it comes to spending time with my family and my friends. I have two younger sisters. They both live in California. Wow. One of them has children, my niece and my nephew, Layla and Trey. Anytime I get to them, I do. The beauty in, you know, what I do as far as my 9 to 5 is concerned is it causes me to travel a lot. So, and I'm in LA at least once a quarter. So I get to go out there, and then I'll spend an extra week out there and just work remotely and be with them. So I don't play about family time. I really try to make time for that. And then friend time. Like I have an incredible village here, friends. We find excuses to go hang out, celebrate, eat, whatever, go do stuff. So that's a part that's really important to me. And it doesn't have to be these big things. It could just be like meeting up or going to the gym together or things like that. So I feel fulfilled on that end, family and friend-wise personally. And I think that I make that a priority. But I think on the dating end of things, that feels more like work to me. Okay. So I don't prioritize that as I should over my work. So, and I think too, even for all the single ladies, I'll speak about us specifically. I think when you're successful, you get so caught up sometimes in your success and what you're doing and the work that you're doing, because I love what I do as well, that you negate that part, in part because you almost want to. You don't want it to exist. You don't want to feel the lack of it, right? I don't want to feel the lack of being single or the lack of not having companionship. So let me dive more into my work. Yeah. So I've been guilty of that as well. So I don't necessarily think I manage that the best, but I think that's the only piece of my life that I don't manage well. In addition to the work that I do, and it's tough. Again, I think my life, when I do find love, will change significantly professionally. I don't think I'll go on a downward spiral or anything. But I think at the pace at which I'm moving, the pace at which I work, it's gonna have to kind of come down a little bit in order for me to make space for somebody else. So I haven't made space yet. I'm working on making space, making a little bit of piece of space right here, Max. But I'm not making enough. So my goal moving forward is to try to create more space for that. So again, it's difficult. Like I think we often ask people that are perceived to be successful, like, how do you manage that? And how are you creating, space over here and there and balancing. We're not, guys. It's a daily struggle. We're not. Sometimes we may feel like, okay, I got myself together, but it's usually short lived, and we're looking down the next week like, oh my God, my house is a mess. I need to clean up. It's always something. But it's how you move through the it's always somethings that makes you successful to me.
And you know what? I think part of that also is giving yourself a little grace through the moments. Yeah, which is very tough for a lot of people. And sometimes we just have to. You kind of mentioned it that every week or every month. Sometimes you're a little over here, and sometimes you can be over here, and maybe that can create balance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To some degree. Yeah, and I think you also said something important. I think it's also good to do an assessment and kind of assess where you are, because if you don't know if you're out of balance, you'll never correct the
Absolutely.
balance. So sometimes it's just good to check in and just kind of, see where you are with that. So I also want you to, I'm curious of your opinion with, what would you say is the biggest challenge you faced really in balancing both your employment and running a business? What's the biggest challenge?
Sometimes taking on too much. Like, and again, everybody's financial situation is different. So if I need a bag, I might take on a freelance opportunity that totally overwhelms me. That totally takes away my sleep hours. That may add some frustrations and stress to my life.
So when you say a bag, you mean some money?
Some money, correct. Bag, aka money. Okay. That would totally bring a certain level of stress to my life that I didn't have prior to that. Sometimes I've had to take on things that I didn't want to get what I needed. That's been probably the most difficult part about this journey, because you don't always have what you need even at times, and you got to kind of reach over here. Okay, let me just do this. Now, because I have a certain level of versatility, I'm able to kind of pull income from different places if I need it from a contract side. But I had to learn how to say no, Max.
Yeah.
I had to learn that my peace and my paycheck were not the same. They were not synonymous, and I couldn't sacrifice my peace for paychecks in certain instances.
And you know what? You're dropping these little nuggets. You're just kind of saying them and scooting by, but I think that's also worth repeating. So
yeah, your peace is not worth a paycheck, and I had to learn that. So for me, the biggest struggle was taking on too much, and then thinking I could do it. We have that confidence. Oh, it's fine. I'll do this. I'll figure it out. And then you turn around and you're complaining every 5 seconds because you're so tired and they're getting on my nerves and they don't know how to do this, and you say yes. So I think it's also about, what are you saying yes to that deserve to know? Because that's on you.
Wow.
So I am now learning how to say no to things that look pretty, on the outside, but you infiltrate it and you're like, oh my God. So because I've said yes to things that I should have said no to, now I can identify, oh, that's a no for me. I've seen this already. I've seen that story play out. No. Or I can identify, I know what that is. I know it's going to bring me this level of stress. I can take that on right now because I need to get this money over here. So sometimes, again, it's about learning from your mistakes and being introspective and accountable to yourself to say, hey, yeah, I probably should have done that, but next time down the line, I know better.
Right.
So I have several I know better moments that pretty much all come from me saying yes when I should have said no.
And you know what? There's a lot to be said about just sometimes making a decision, figuring out. Sometimes you don't know what you can do or can handle.
Yeah.
Until you get out there and try. Until you try something. And I think so many people in life and in business are just sometimes so afraid of failure that they won't take chances, they won't take risks, they won't put themselves out there in any way. And I think life should be about taking calculated risks.
Yeah.
And especially if you're balancing the two of these things, you sometimes you don't know what you can do until you're having to do it. And there's only one way to learn if you can, and that's to give it a try.
Yeah.
And I always tell people it's very important to be okay. I think to be successful, you have to have a certain relationship or acceptance of failure is going to happen sometimes.
Absolutely.
And I think that so many people are so afraid to fail that they don't try so many things because they're that what if I don't do it, what if I fail, and so it's all what if you do, what if it does go well, so I think it's great to be able to focus on that. And again, I think sometimes you don't even know what you're capable of. If you don't flex. Like it says, some people want to get strong but don't want to pick up the weights. You know what I mean?
For
And
sure.
so you got to exercise some of these things and figure it out.
Can I offer this advice too, Max? Because I had to learn this. I think for those of us who consider ourselves to be employeepreneurs, you have to understand that if you are someone's employee, you know what is expected in that respect, what energy is expected, what level of effort is expected. And I think sometimes when you're an employeepreneur and you take on a contract job, you approach it with a more casual level of energy and approach. But essentially the demand is more than likely going to be the same as your 9 to 5. So if you're going into a contract situation, you have to give it your employee 9 to 5 energy. Right, it's going to demand that. Right. So if you're not ready to do that, you probably shouldn't take it. And
I think sometimes it's going to demand more than
exactly.
that.
And we don't always, I'm just going to do this over here, and it's only going to be this many hours. And when you get in it, trust me, the expectation is going to be the same as how it is when you're working for your employer on your 9 to 5. And if you got to know that going in, or you're going to wear yourself out, be super disappointed because you automatically enter into something with mismanaged expectations.
I agree. And so that kind of leads me right into something else I want to talk about. And it just as important, I think, to know when that shift or balance from employee to where you can kind of go into your own thing.
Yeah.
But I want you to also talk about the team and when you started building a team and how important team is to really even to achieve that employeepreneurship balance. So let's talk about team and how did you decide when it was time to hire help?
Man, you know what? I haven't hired no help, Max. I ain't gonna hold you. Team is super important, and it's funny we're talking about this because for me, I wanted to be in a position, and I still want to be in a position where I can really pay people what they're supposed to get paid for, what I would be paying them for. I understand internships and all that. I've done that in the past where I've had some younger folks come in, want the experience, and I try to give them that. But at the end of the day, now that I'm in this point in my career, if I cannot pay you what you're supposed to have, I got to do it myself, or I have to forfeit that until I can. So I'm in that space right now. So because I can do a lot of different things on my own, I'm a one-man band in that respect. But on the other side of that, because of the relationships I've built in this industry, because of the vendors I've been able to hire through Essence, if I need to hire someone for something, when I have the finances to do so, I have a huge Rolodex of people I can reach out to. So one-offs, I'm good. Or being able to even pass them along to somebody else who might need the help. But a Shari Nycole media team is still a work in progress, to be quite honest with you. But I also know that several of the people that are in my network that I utilize for one-offs, that I hire for, Essence and things like that, they're going to be a part of that team when I'm in a financial position to be able to do that.
Well, I think it's important to I think everything you're saying, the consistent theme is you always know when it's time.
For me, it's time when I can pay people. For some people, they don't feel that way. It's like, if somebody wants to be a part of this and I tell them I have the money, well, they know what they signed up for. That's fine too. But also you get what you pay for and what you don't pay for. And so sometimes, no shade on this generation, they move a little differently than I would like at times. And so, people always tell me, you should reach out to these young college students. I said, that sounds all good now. No shade to the college students, okay? If you're serious, hit me up. But there's a certain way that this generation moves and does not move that I'm not necessarily in favor with when it comes to working. And if I'm going to frustrate myself trying to bring you up to speed in that respect, I'll just do it myself. I don't have the capacity for that stress. Right. It's too much I'm doing. So when I can get some stuff off my plate, I'll be more likely to be in a mentorship, management capacity with someone. But right now, I need the finances to just hire someone that knows what they're doing. Right. So I don't have to go through that because I just don't have the capacity. Yeah,
and time is money.
It is. It is.
So I want to talk about also managing personal and business finances. That's another big part of it. It kind of that whole juggling. The multiple streams of income. How do you approach the financial planning element of being an employeepreneurship? Because it's really kind of like it's both hats. Like we kind of were talking about this earlier, and it's kind of like they're two different things together. And so, what's your strategy for kind of managing both of those?
I'm not the best planner, guys. I'm a creative. I need that to be an understood thing. So for me, and it's crazy. Before the last couple months, I really wasn't bringing much into my business, and in part because I was so inundated with stuff for Essence and radio. It was just too much going on for me to even kind of do any outreach and kind of see who needed something or what have you. And then an opportunity presented itself recently where I was able to bring some income into my business. And so it was feast or famine for me, and it was a lot of famine in the probably mid 2023 all the way through the tail end of 2024. It really wasn't a lot coming in. And so I didn't necessarily have, in my mind, I'm trying to find something so I can get some expenses going, to write some stuff off, because that's my concern. It's like, there's nothing to write off, so anything I do bring in, I'm in trouble. And I can't offset, like you talked about before, what I'm making, via my being an employee. There's nothing to offset it now because there's no money, there's no expenses and all that. So for me, I've kind of, if anything, I've set a goal for myself, a money goal. Like, hey, I want to bring $50,000 into Shari Nycole Media every year. That's what I want to do. Or this year, that's what my goal is. And if I'm looking, even it's June, if I've only brought in $10,000, I got some work to do. So that's probably the only kind of plan I have in terms of that. It's tough, man. Like I just hate the concept of even like financial planning, all of that I hate. Like I want to be able to extend the responsibility of my accountants to do those things. And we all know accountants, they charge for different services. So they hang out, they're doing my taxes real well. But I do want to be able to move into a space where they are managing my money just more on a full-time basis, where I'm just kind of checking in and they're like, okay, we're here. I'm like, okay, good. Because I just don't like it. But setting the markers for Shari Nycole Media right now is probably my main thing. But I haven't had the issue with managing because honestly, I haven't really brought in as much. Not nearly. I had an incredible 2020. 2021, top of 2022, there was a significant amount of money that I needed to manage, and personal business. I really kind of kept them really separate, Max. To be honest with you, what I made through my business, I expensed out towards my business. Lawyers' fees, that's a big one too, y'all. If you need any type of mentorship, counsel with lawyers, it's a great expense. You get great information and assistance, and you can expense it out, and their fees are the full. But equipment that I needed, mics from my office and monitors and things like that, I kept them separate because honestly, I was nervous. Like, I don't know. If it was a business meeting with food, separate. So for me,
you know what,
keeping them apart.
I want to jump in and say that, definitely, I think it's good to keep them apart. But you're the common denominator in both of those things, and so there is. And I kind of wanted to throw this out there because this is important. I think even if your business, the funny thing about the IRS allows people who are in business to, it almost is baked in that you're going to not have profit for so many years when you get started. So I want to kind of take this moment to explain to people out there and that even if you're planning things for your business, even if the business is not bringing in income, it can still have expenses, which most people do, and they could still expense things and offset, as long as you can relay it or tie it to business. And a lot of times, it's about documenting those things, even gas and transportation to things. If you're kind of going to talk to somebody, not every business deal results in a close or money, but you kind of go on your way to talk to someone. That's a business expense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, we kind of talked about earlier, even going to meals, even if it didn't result in an actual cash transaction, but you talked about your business, you talked about what you do, then it automatically becomes a write-off. So I do want to say that to people, that even if your business is not bringing in income, it doesn't mean you can't expense things that you do in the to conjure business in the future, even if it doesn't generate that.
And also too, what's crazy too, Max, is when the money isn't coming into your business and you have certain business expenses. Like for me, it's software. There's certain software I use that's automated. It's coming out every month, so I would have to supplement that with my personal income to pay the bill. Like that's how you have to do sometimes. So you look up like, man, I'm a little low this month. Yeah, because you didn't bring anything into your business and you had to get that, you had to cover what was being pulled out on the other side from your business, from your personal.
And so it should be justifiable that you do the other way around too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's like you know, when you and I think it's really good for people to talk with their financial person or accountant or whoever does their taxes or whatever. But I was a tax preparer, even though I didn't stay with accounting, but I still did taxes for 20 years. You know, personal taxes for 20 years. I literally, maybe 4 years ago, or when we moved here, when I moved to Atlanta 2 years ago, I think I had maybe 5 people who still just wouldn't go away. So now I'm not doing any of that anymore. But for a while I was doing hundreds of tax returns, you know, for a long time. So I understand how that works. And then, like I said, for me, I had I will tell you, in 1994, remember that year to be exact. That was my first kind of year making some significant income. It was my first full-time year being full-time in business, and I remember actually going to a tax guy, and I remember the amount of money that they charged me for that, and I said, I'm never going to pay that again, and I didn't. Because I just said, you know what, I'm going to really spend some time learning how to do all this stuff. And so actually I went out and so I learned all that stuff. I'm just kind of one of a do-it-yourselfer kind of type person anyway. And I try to leverage things. And I feel like my philosophy is, if you got to do something twice, you need to kind of know how to do the taxes. It's something you got to do every year. So I'm going to implore people to go out there and learn how these things work, especially as an employee, how you can balance these two, because there really is a sweet spot that exists for business owners who are in your situation, who are balancing both. You almost have the best of both worlds. You get that solid income. You need to write off those taxes, especially if you don't have tons of kids and things like that you need the other expenses. So the next best thing, if you don't have kids, is a business, honestly. So that is really super important. You know what, I have 50 million other questions I want to go. We just went off, and we're kind of looking at the time has just gotten, oh my God, we're just like I've only got to like 5 questions. I had like 15 more for you, and so unfortunately we gotta move to but what I want to do is I want you to kind of share with everybody, if you what would you say is kind of like the single most important piece of advice you'd give to someone trying to manage both of these, employment and entrepreneurship?
Wow. Biggest piece of advice. Let's see. I think it goes back to that grace concept that you talked about earlier. I think you are going to run into situations where you're going to have to do what you don't want to do what you want to do, or to attain what you want to have, or even attain sometimes what you need. I would also say, don't get discouraged when you're not seeing income come into your business, because, like we talked about, it could be feast or famine. That's part of entrepreneurship. I also would say, give your 9 to 5 100%. Don't sacrifice that for your business. So if you're going to be an employeepreneur, understand both get 100% as much as possible. And sometimes your 9 to 5 gets 100% and your business gets 50%. But you can't sacrifice your bread and butter unless you are totally ready for what could potentially come from you doing that. I think sometimes we get so entranced with, ooh, I'm going to entrepreneurship, I'm starting my business, where you're not paying attention to what you're getting paid every 2 weeks to do. Right. And you could potentially lose your job. Utilize the financial footing that being an employee gives you to then funnel and finance your business. Don't do it the other way. That's a great I can't stress it enough. My 9 to 5s get my full attention. I don't sacrifice those for anyone, even when I take contract work. Meaning, I understand if my contract work demands a lot of me, that's not going to stop me from giving everything I have on the other end to my 9 to 5. That's never going to change. So it's cute and all, and I got this business venture and all that, but don't fall for the okie doke. And then you're having to, be over here with those checks stop coming in every 2 weeks, and now you're having to really fight because some of us are not ready for full-time entrepreneurship, and it's okay. There's no shame in it.
Right. Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. That's the thing I would stress the most. Do not negate your responsibilities that you have as an employee and give that energy to your business fully. You're going to sacrifice the financial security that you have, and we're not in a time right now where anybody should be doing that. We're just not. We're actually in probably the most uncertain times that many of us have ever seen, if you really think about it. So don't sacrifice your financial security. I'm not saying don't start the business. That's not what I'm saying, everyone. What I'm saying is understand that if you're going to be an employeepreneur, your business is going to be a supplement or a complement to your 9-to-5 until you're in a position to fully walk away from that 9-to-5, knowing, okay, I have enough over here now. I can move into full-time entrepreneurship if you choose to.
No, I think it's a great point I think of everything. I think that's probably a really good point, because it is full-time entrepreneurship is not for everyone, and you want to your income will tell you when it's time to make that decision.
Tell you.
And I definitely agree with you that you want to definitely make sure it's the right time when you do make the leap. I wish we had way more time, but as we wrap up today's episode, here's what I want people to take away. And whether you're balancing a job, running a business, or doing both, success comes from really managing your energy. We're talking about that a lot, staying focused, and taking consistent action. So, again, remember, it's not about doing everything perfectly. It's about showing up every day and making progress. So, Shari, before we go, I just want to say you gave us so much information, and I do want to just give you a great thank you, because like I said,
thank you, Max. I'm glad I didn't waste anyone's time. I'm not the biggest finance girl, but God has blessed me with some really cool opportunities and some great experience from them. So I hope that resonates with everybody that listens.
I think the most important thing is you kind of not that people need permission, but the going back to that, just seeing that it's okay to do both.
It's all right.
Saying how you can do both and how they do balance. So I think that's a lot of what you added to this conversation, which is really, really important and impactful. And so, I want to just thank you for joining us today and sharing your incredible journey and the insights, both balancing, it's balancing this stuff is no small feat, And I hope today's episode has given people practical tools and inspiration to navigate both the employee and entrepreneurial worlds. And again, Shari, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. And for our listeners who want to learn more about employeepreneurship, where can they find you online?
All right, first you can find Deetra Giles. I got to give my sister a shout out, DETHRA_GILES. Please follow her, Deetra, on Instagram. Also follow her on LinkedIn. You guys can follow me on Instagram and X, formerly known as Twitter, at Shari_Nycole, SHARI_NYCOLE. You can also check out my website, ShariNycole.net. You can check me out on Facebook at Shari Nycole Media. You can also check me out on LinkedIn, I believe, at Shari Nycole Media as well. I'm all over the place. You can't miss me. I'm on Threads. I'm on TikTok at Shari Nycole. I ain't really on TikTok that much, but I'm there. You can find me.
Thanks for sharing, Shari. And for all of you tuning in, if you want to keep up with me, Max Fortune, and stay connected with the Mind Your Business podcast, you can find me on all social media platforms at Mind Your Biz Expert. And again, we're on YouTube, all the other major podcast platforms. And make sure you follow, like, and subscribe, and keep the conversation going. And again, we love hearing from people, which we do every week, and continue to engage with our community, and let's continue to build together. And until next time, stay sharp, stay focused, and always mind your business. See you in the next episode.